Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, dogs and cats, lions and tigers, everybody can listen to the Greg Anthony Show, the greatest show on earth. Yes, and we are great because we're better than the Orange Monster. Yes, and his Trump rallies. Yes, because they were all meant to lead you to the gulag, because now they're arresting people or going into their homes if you're a Trump supporter and you had nothing to do with the Capitol riots. At least that's what a lady in Washington, D.C. said when the FBI, I mean, they're really busy on this, came to an unsuspecting group, homeowner, really a nice person, and they came into her home and said, "You're a Trump supporter, and we think you're involved in the Capitol riots." And she goes, "I don't even know what the hell you're talking about." So that's what's going on, Mr. Trump. And people that don't realize that he was on the same team as Biden and the Jesuit Vatican-led New World Order, there's no hope for you. That's all I can say on it. And, you know, my producer, we got Plan B coming. I said I wanted to give you the whole story about Slats Grobnik going to Romania to break the curse. But I'm going to do that tomorrow. We're going to Plan B. Well, Slats is on his way to Vlad's castle, the Romanian castle where Dracula, is. And he's getting some trinkets there because we want to take the curse we want to break, flatten the curve of this curse. And we're at a stalemate right now because there's millions of people resisting, protesting, but the government's putting up a brick wall and basically going to bring in the military and everything to vaccinate you. So we're at a stalemate. Slats has made progress because he has been putting all these trinkets in from all over the world. We've been covering it here. And once he gets the blood of Dracula and the bones of others, and puts it in his little cauldron, he will checkmate Dr. Dracula Fauci. We'll wait and see. But I have to go to Plan B. My producer, Molly the Pigeon. Yes, there is a talking pigeon here. And if you don't believe me, you have to come to the replica Roman Colosseum that Slats built. So that once the curse is broken, all of these rulers of evil will come marching like the Walking Dead and perform as gladiators. And we'll put 100,000 people in there, no cardboard fans or robots. Okay, we'll do that tomorrow because this interview I have is really too good. Daryl Eberhard, I've known for over 20 years, has been an avid Jesuit researcher, serious, and man, he's a good guy, former intelligence officer in the military. And he turned me on to so many books over the years to read, which he still is doing. And I brought him on for a long interview, and I want to play that for you. But let's talk about this seriously. I started to understand the Vatican's role in this when I was almost blown up in a bombing in Rome when I was an editor for the American newspaper there. And it was about 10 days before Ronald Reagan came, and they, of course, blamed it on some right-wing organization. And they said it's because of the hangman Reagan. Now, the real ironic thing is I left America because Reagan was president. I said, I'm not living in a country where they have B actors turn into presidents. So now look what they've done. It's getting worse. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was governor for a while, but then went back to be the Terminator when he quit. So it's all a game. It's all a show. They're all doing this. Now, Trump, he did not sign his contract. That's why he's not back, because he didn't want to be typecast. He's now on an audition hunt to get into romantic comedies. He wants to be like the senior citizen Cary Grant. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to know about them. So after I was almost blown up, I started realizing that was a false flag, that actually that bomb was put in there and blamed on this right-wing terrorist organization because they were using terrorism back then. The strategy there was test it out in Italy, blow up the Bologna bombing, do this to the American newspaper, other American sites all over Rome, and let's blame it on these right-wing organizations. So the CIA, Mossad, all of them were involved in this, and they actually put the bomb in there, and they did it at a time when it could only injure me and maybe another guy that was working there because it was very early in the morning. And after I found out it couldn't be the terrorist group and it had to be an inside job, as well as the CIA money funding the newspaper, I decided, maybe I don't know as much as I think I do. And so I started to trace it to the Vatican, and that changed my whole life. And, after that and other things that occurred in Rome, I wanted to know the extent of the Jesuit involvement in the U.S. government. And I discovered, like a few other researchers, that the Roman Catholic substratum is especially the revolution, going back to the revolution of our country, that produced this republic is amazing to this day. And so the mounting evidence that I found changed the way I looked at life, changed the way I looked at the political landscape, and I've been doing it ever since. And unless you understand the Vatican Jesuits, you'll never get what's happening today. And it goes all the way back. I at least started in 17, when the revolution started. They go way back before that. And Protestants who still are protesting, very few here realize why the Jesuits were actually formed, and that was to behead anybody who was a heretic. So anyway, Daryl Eberhardt's with me, and I want to finish the show with his interview because it's really good. And tomorrow, don't worry, we will get back to General Slats Grobnik, the only way to break the Jesuit curse. Okay, back on the Greg Anthony Show here on FirstAmendmentRadio.net. My guest again this week is Daryl Eberhardt, and Daryl is an avid Vatican Jesuit researcher trying to tell us how they are involved in world events, and the dark side of the Vatican is probably the only side. I've known Daryl for almost 20 years, and we talked a lot in the years past, and things seem to just get worse and worse. But there is hope, and the hope is, something, if you know the truth, if you look for it, you can find it, and you have to talk about the Vatican. Daryl, today, things are going downhill real quick in America. I call it a banana republic, and the signs are all there. I'm going to shift over to the Bible, talk about the Vatican, how in the King James Bible they were easily depicted and pointed out by Protestants who were protesters back then that they were the Antichrist institution. Since the 1500s, the Jesuits were involved in getting rid of that, and they did a lot to kind of mix up who is the Antichrist. I think this whole movement that we see in America right now, let's go, since we don't have much time, not today, but America and the world are catapulting into a one world order, one world religion system quick. So let's look at it from a biblical perspective and the Vatican Jesuits and how they're involved. Go ahead.
Yeah, all of my research has shown me that this all boils down basically to four words: the war on Bibles. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you can expand it out to be the war on true Bibles, so I should put in there, so we'll make it 6 or 5 words. Right. The war on true Bibles. And it continues to this very day, and it extends out into the war on true Bible-believing Christians. And just studying history, even a cursory look at it, shows you that this hatred has been going on for century after century. Papal Rome has just a super well-documented long history of hating Jews and blaming everything on the Jews. And I've sent several of the recent emails that I sent out, and I got a lot of trouble sending emails out. But one of the ones I sent out recently pointed out that this favorite thing is to blame everything on the Jews. And it's what's so sickening is that the so-called alternative movement, the so-called truth movement, just totally concentrates on blaming everything on the Jews, and that needs to be exposed. And that is definitely kind of the burden that's on my heart. You mentioned about the Bible. The King James Bible in the English seems to, for some reason, and I think I know what it is, because it's the true word of God in the English language. I'm not a Bible thumper, as they say, or that. What I do know is that everything in the Bible has proven 100% true as far as individuals, and for me as an individual in my life, has proven true of nations. And the Bible just is replete full of story after story after story of God's people, so-called, turning their back on him, and they did it in the northern kingdom. Some people call it Samaria, but when the kingdom broke up under Solomon and son Rehoboam, before that they had a united kingdom under the preceding kings, under King Saul and under King David, and then under Rehoboam, which was what David's son Solomon came along, and then Rehoboam comes along, and boom, all of a sudden your united kingdom of Israel breaks into two kingdoms, a northern kingdom called Samaria, or the northern kingdom of Israel, and a southern kingdom called Judah. And both times those two nations, the Bible very clearly says they played the, I'm using biblical terminology, I'm not being mean, it says they played the whore or the harlot on God and turned their back on him and his laws. They adopted all of the pagan laws and everything, and God says, hey, because you did that, I'm sending the Assyrians to thump you guys up in the north, the northern kingdom of the divided kingdom, northern kingdom of Israel, Samaria, and then a little bit later he turns around and says, okay, hey, look, Judah, the southern kingdom, you saw your sister, your northern sister, get thrown out of the land, and most of them were taken, prisoner and carried off to other lands within the Assyrian Empire. And so God says, okay, you saw that, and you still didn't follow my laws and my judgments and my statutes or anything. So guess what? I'm sending Nebuchadnezzar in from Babylon. He's going to clean your clocks. And everything in the Bible has proven true. So again, one of the main things that I've noticed is that this all boils down to a war on Bibles, and the church, the Roman Catholic Church, has made war. And I'm not picking on Roman Catholics. I'm picking on the Institute. And they have just a history of not only burning Bibles, which they did. I'm looking at a little book right now. It's called The Burning of the Bibles. And it was written by two guys, and it deals with the burning of the Bibles up in Champlain, New York. That's in the United States of America, New York. And the subtitle is Defense of the... I'm not promoting any books because I know people can't buy books, but Defense of the Protestant Version of the Scriptures Against the Attacks of Popish Apologists for the Champlain. And Champlain is the area in New York where they burned the Bibles. It's written by John Dowling and W.C. Brownlee.
I'm looking at something now that you sent me in 2009. It was October 14th. I've got a number. You used to send me all your newsletters, and this one was entitled "Who is the Real Antichrist?" And it was from your website back then called toughissues.org. And it started out this way: John Wycliffe in England, Martin Luther in Germany, John Calvin in France, William Tyndale, John Knox in Scotland, Ulrich Zwingli in Switzerland, and countless others all preached that the humble Nazarene was the Christ and that the proud Roman papacy was the Antichrist. And you went on in your newsletter to me to point out a number of books and verified it very well. So explain to people, I think you know this quite well, that first of all, whether it is the King James Bible or the one that preceded that, which was the Geneva Bible, which came with footnotes, very interestingly. I was interested in that in the book of Revelations, where they pinpoint how the Antichrist is pointed out in the Bible. But let's talk about how the Jesuits tried to change that back in the 15 or 1600s and what they're doing today with all these other Bibles that are coming out, all these other versions. Go ahead, because I know you know a lot about this.
Yeah, and the big thing with them was that they figured out after a while they couldn't burn the Bible believers fast enough. They couldn't burn the Bibles that were based on the correct Greek manuscripts fast enough, and so they changed tactics. Although they may be getting very close to the point where they can kill all the Bible believers and burn all the correct Bibles, they're very, very close to that right now, where they weren't in the past because of the high-tech machine that's available to them to go after people. But yeah, throughout history, there were Bible-believing groups that did not come out of the Catholic Church. They were always separate from the Catholic Church, like the Bogomils, the Waldenses, the Albigenses. The Catholic Church has always maintained that, hey, these groups all were apostate Catholics and stuff. No, they weren't. They were always independent of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church made war on them and on their Bibles that were in the vernacular, which means that they were in the common person's language, whether it was Romaunt language from that the Waldenses and Albigenses and that had those Bibles. They had a true Latin Bible that was called the Vulgate, so the Catholic Church comes out with their own Vulgate Latin Bible, which is based on a bunch of corrupt manuscripts, mostly today's so-called modern Bibles are almost all based on, for their New Testament translations, are based on 2 to 5 corrupt manuscripts, and interestingly, they all come out of Rome. Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, etc. And Chris Pinto of Adallam Films has done a very good job of documenting all of that. I love the heck out of the guy, but he, like most of everybody else in the so-called alternative media, have all chipped in and said, Trump's going to save us and the right's going to save us, and they don't realize that the Jesuits are infamous, I should say, for constantly playing the right off against the left or communists off against fascists or whatever. They control both sides in the narrative, and then in the process, in the chaos, the civil war, the revolution, whatever takes place, no matter whether the dictatorship comes from the right or the left or something, they come out the winners because in the process they kill off as many of their enemies, usually just about all of them, that they can get their hands on during the process. And that's why I'm a little concerned with what I see going on in this country, because no matter, and they're still pushing the idea, the narrative, believe me, on a fair bit of the alternative media, they're still pushing the narrative that we're still going to have a right-wing coup, and all of these top generals and admirals, even some are retired, some are active, but these guys, they're going to restore Trump, they're going to remove Biden and his administration, and everything's going to go back to normal, and we're going to be America again under a Constitution, et cetera, which is baloney because there is no Constitution anymore. That's all been flushed down the commode, for a lack of a better term. And America is not coming back, I don't believe. I believe that we went the same way as the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom of Israel and Judah. And you just don't do this. You don't play games with God. And that's why I would recommend, and I'm recommending to almost everybody I know, is things aren't going to get better. You better get prepared for worst-case scenarios. Military units do that. They always have contingency plans. If they live in an area that floods a lot, then they prepare for floods. If they're in an area that has wildfires, they prepare for wildfires. If they live in an area where super strong wind comes with fires and that, then of course they're making preparations to get a little bit downwind or something and away from it. And anyway, the bottom line is that we need to get ready for whatever's coming down, and whatever's coming down is going to be ugly. And America is not coming back, barring a miracle to the tune of the Spanish Armada, where a lot of people, even the Spanish, were kind of thinking that God intervened with the winds and that and blew them off course. And it kind of delayed the Inquisition in England for about 100 years, and sort of Protestantism, which the Protestantism in England is sort of like Episcopalianism and higher church type stuff of the Anglo-Catholic side, and that they wanted to get England back under the rule of the Pope, and the Spanish Armada they thought was going to do the trick. And so God evidently throws monkey wrenches occasionally into their plans, but not always, because the proof is that there's 50 to 100 million Bible-believing Christians, that have been murdered, had genocide performed on them, or regicide, if it was probably even a better term, on them, just as the people in Croatia. The Catholic Church has never had a great love for the eastern side of the Catholic Church, if you would, the Orthodox Christians, because I sent out an email recently where I mentioned 5 of the big criminals that were responsible for the massacre, mostly of Orthodox Christians in Croatia, but to a much smaller extent Jews, because there weren't the numbers of Jews there, or I'm sure there would have been a lot more Jews killed. But there are in wrath of the church, which World War II was basically a major inquisition on steroids, which I think World War III is going to be a major inquisition on steroids that's coming here. So I'm telling people, read your true Bibles if you can find a true Bible, and the Reina Valera Gomez is the one that's based on the right manuscripts, to the best of my knowledge, in Spanish, for Spanish-speaking people, and the King James Bible, the old King James, not the new King James, which is based on a lot of the phony, baloney, false manuscripts, Vatican manuscripts, if we would. Don't put your hope in that. Read the correct Bible, the Bible that's based on the correct manuscript. So again, King James in the English language, the old King James, and the Reina Valera Gomez Bible in Spanish. So read your Bibles. Get as close to God as you can. There really is a God, believe it or not. Some people, because of many Americans, because of their upbringing with all of the stuff that has been put out about, what shall we say, Darwinism and all of this stuff, evolution, that everything has been designed to push people away from believing that God is the creator of people. And I don't know how anyone can look at the human body, the human blood, the human eye, and not see God's handiwork in it. The same thing with the planets, the stars, anything else, and to think that this all just happened because some giant somewhere in the world put all of this stuff into a garbage can, shook it up, and it all came out like it was really created. But it came out because it was just what do they call it? It's like if you have a broken clock, completely broken, to find one, and you throw it in a bag, and you shake the bag, and all of a sudden out it comes in pristine condition. No, that doesn't happen that way. There's just way too much proof that there is a God that rules in men's affairs. And when nations don't believe that and follow it, or when individuals don't, and I've seen it in my own life, then you pay a price. If you sow to the wind, the Bible says you reap the whirlwind. And the United States of America has been the world's policeman, running around enforcing if you would, the New World Order, if you want to call it that. But it's basically the old world order of trying to get back to Babylon, where you have all people coming together and having a one world government. This thing it's older than Christianity.
Okay, folks, that was Daryl Eberhard, and I promise I'll have him on again next week. And you're listening to The Greg Anthony Show here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Come here on FirstAmendmentRadio.net every day at noon, and you can also get my shows going back many, many years on Greg Anthony's Journal.wordpress.com. And a lot of people ask me, what happened to your Arctic Beacon website that you had years ago? And I said, well, it's not mine anymore. I forgot to do the domain name, and they usurped it. They took it, and I can't get it back. So we had to transfer as much of the information as possible over to GregAnthony'sJournal.wordpress.com. And I want to thank First Amendment Radio for really helping me do that. Back tomorrow. In 3 days no, I can't do the 33 again. Back tomorrow on The Greg Anthony Show.